Let's look at how we can create a table of descriptive statistics in APA format. That's what we're going to focus on, is the APA format. So here we've got our data on 100 employees in a lumber company, and we've got data on usual hours worked, their education in years, their yearly earnings, their age, and then their sex, where 1 is male and 2 is female. And we want to create a table of descriptive statistics looking at all of these variables. Now let's look at what this should look like. Let me bring a Word document over. And here we have a APA formatted table of descriptive statistics. And let's look at some of the characteristics of this table that we're trying to get. First of all, it's double spaced because everything outside of the table itself is double spaced. It has table 1 or whatever table number you'll use on the first line, not in italics, but everything's in 12-point Times New Roman. We've got the title down here that's actually in italics. And then we have one of the most unusual things about APA tables is that you're only allowed to use horizontal lines. You're not allowed to use vertical lines. So that's what we have in here is horizontal lines. And we've got a line at the top and the bottom, and a line separating the column headers from what's in the column. So we're interested in descriptive statistics, so I'm going to suggest that we do mean and the standard deviation and the range. Now we could do the 95% confidence interval, we could do standard error, whatever you think would be meaningful to you and to the reader. Don't just start reporting everything, otherwise you just get all these numbers going all over the place and nobody's happy. So we have the measures that we're looking at are these 4 variables: usual hours worked, education, annual salary, and age. I'm not putting sex in here because the mean and standard deviation of the sex isn't obvious what it means. We can just include that in the text. And then so we've got the mean, the standard deviation, and the range I thought would be a useful thing to put in there too, so that people can tell what the high and the low score are. And then finally, we've got a note down below here that says what the sample size is, n equals 100. And that means we've got 100 data points for each of them because this was all based on the sample of 100 people and there was no missing data. So this is what we're going to try to get. Now let's go back to Excel. And here we have our data, our raw data in our in a table format. So let's go to data, and hopefully you have data analysis already installed. If you don't have data analysis already installed, you should install it. There's a link below telling you how to do that. And I click on data analysis. We're going to go to descriptive statistics. Okay. And it says, what's the input range? So I'm going to start here at C5 and go all the way over to column G. I'm going to put sex in here just to show you how we can what we can do with this. Go all the way down to the bottom with Control Shift down arrow, and it's grouped by columns. There's labels in the first row there, and let's put this in a new worksheet apply because we're going to add and delete a lot of columns and rows. So let's call this new worksheet descriptive statistics, and we want to check summary statistics here. Now, if you're going to report the confidence level for the mean, the 95% confidence interval, you would check that. But we're just going to do the mean, the standard deviation, and the range. So I think this is correct. I'm going to press OK. That'll take me to the new, so change tabs. We now have a tab for descriptive statistics. We were on the tab called data, but now we're in descriptive statistics. And let's round these numbers down while everything is selected. Oops. Let's go to home. and change that to number format. Okay, so here we have our descriptive statistics in the usual way that they're laid out with the data analysis tool. Now, one of the interesting things so what we have here is we have the names of all the descriptive statistics that we have, and over here we have the actual numerical value for the average hours worked, education, yearly income, age, and sex. Now, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put the titles over the right column. So I'm going to click on sex where it says 1 equals male. I'm going to do Control C for copy, or actually I'm going to do Control X, and then I'm going to put it over here and do Control V to copy it. And there I've moved it over to the actual data. That's what we want. So let's do that for all the variables. Age, Control X to copy and remove it, H to paste it there. Yearly earnings, Control Copy. Let's put that over here, Control V, or actually I should have done Control X. There, I deleted it. Okay, now here we've got education, Control X, Control V, and usual hours worked, Control X, Control V. Okay, now we've got the right variable name over the numbers. So we don't want all these extra variable names. So I'm going to delete that column I. I'm going to delete column G. I'm going to delete column E. So I'm right-clicking on the column, and it gives me the option of deleting it. And I'm going to right-click on column C up at the top, and I'm going to delete it. And there we have all the variables that we need. I've got a lot more, or all the descriptive statistics that we need, plus a lot more. And let's make that column wider so that we can have. Now, I said we wanted the mean, and we wanted the standard deviation, and we also want the range. Now, notice how the range, they just give one number. And I said, let's have the range, let's report the range as the minimum and the maximum. And that's what, on the same line, going like for the usual hours worked, 0 to 72. So what we're going to do is let's start deleting the stuff we don't want, because you don't want to report too many numbers because humans get overwhelmed by numbers. The standard error, that's not really that. I'm going to select that row and delete it. The median, that's kind of interesting, especially for yearly earnings, but we're not going to use it this time. Delete. The mode we're not going to use. Delete. Standard deviation we're going to use. Sample variance. Delete. Kurtosis, nope, we're not going to use. Delete. Skewness. Now that's kind of interesting. Notice how it's only the yearly earnings that are over 1. Usually over 1 means that they're pretty skewed, but we're not going to report skewness. You could if you'd like. And here we've got range, but not in the format we're going to use it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just delete these numbers because that's not the format that I want to report the range. And before we delete the minimum and maximum, let's put the range in here. Now, if I want to say the range goes from 0 to 72, I can't just type in 0 minus 72, otherwise Excel might think it's an equation. So I'm going to type in the single quotation mark, and I'm going to type 0 space dash 72. And so Excel will treat that as a text, which I want. So I'll press enter. Now for the range of education, it goes from 8 to 18. So single quotation mark, 8 space dash space 18. I can go to the next cell and we're going to do the yearly earnings. Now that's 30. That goes from 0 to 306,731. Let's change that to single quotation mark, 0 space, tire, and let's put in 306.7K dollars. That's an easy way to see what the range of the salaries is by using kilodollars for thousands of dollars. For the age, it's going to go from 19 to 69. So single quotation mark, 19 space dash space 69. And for sex, it goes from 1 to 2. That doesn't mean a whole lot. Now what are we actually going to do about this sex? It's 1 equals male, 2 equals female, and it says a mean of 136. What does that actually mean? That the average person has their gender is 1.36. Well, an easy way to interpret this is that you just look at what the 2 decimal points are, and that indicates the percentage of whatever the high number is. So we've got 1 equals male, 2 equals female. So this means it's 36% female, the sample. You don't look at the part before, you just look at the part after the decimal, and that's what the high number is for categorical data, if you've labeled things as either 0 and 1 or 1 and 2. So we can note that the sample was 36% female, and we could put that in just the regular text. We're not going to report that in the table. That you would want to report the descriptive statistics of sex. So we would say the sample was 36% female. So just remember that, note that someplace else and put that there. Okay, now we're going to still keep deleting rows and columns that we don't need. So we've got this, we don't need this minimum anymore, delete. We don't need this maximum anymore, so we can delete that. The sum we don't need, delete. Now this count, normally we call that n. We could report that as n for each number, but notice how we've got 100 for all of them. Now, sometimes we have missing data or we collect different amounts of data for different statistics. If that was the case, it would be good to have a column for n, but in our case, we can just put a little note at the bottom saying that n was 100 for all of these variables. So let's delete that row also. And let's delete this column sex because we're just going to report that 36% of the participants were female. So let's delete that also. Okay, so here we've got the numbers that we want to report, and we've got to get them in APA format. Now, one of the things that we want to do is we want to have all the variables that are in these columns, have them be in different rows. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to transpose this data. So I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to select everything in this table with the Shift arrow keys. And I'm going to do Control-C for copy. And now, over here, say in G7, I am going to paste, but I'm going to use this paste special. So if I right-click, it gives me some paste options. And one of them where you've got the vertical and the sideways ones is called transpose, and that's what I'm going to do. So here I have pasted our data, and we've got the mean and the standard deviation and the range in columns, and the variables in the rows here, like we want. Now notice how everything is selected, and this would be a good time to change this to Times New Roman. So if I go over to the home fonts and start typing Times, I'll get Times New Roman. And there I've got Times New Roman, and APA requires that things be Times New Roman 12. So there we have Times New Roman 12. And let's see what else we can do. Let's make this column wider so that everything will fit into it. Now we don't need this column H, it's empty, so we're going to delete that. We've got the mean, the standard deviation, the range, it's J, looks like it should be a little wider. And so now we've got everything in 12-point Times New Roman, the proper column headings. And then over here, we've got the variables. So let's call these measures. These are the different measures that we're getting the descriptions for. Okay, now let's try getting the lines in the right place. Let's select everything in this table. And if we right click, we can go to Format Cells. And the first thing that we're going to do is just take off, we go to Border, and we're going to take off all the lines. So we've got none. So we do that, and now we're just starting from a clean slate here. So let's select everything in this table again. Right click, Format Cells, and the first thing that we need is a top border, and we need a bottom border. So I'll click down here on the bottom border, press OK, and we're starting to get there. Now we want a horizontal line below the column headings. So let's choose this whole row, Shift, and then right arrow, and we're going to do Format Cells. And the outline, it already says that we have a top border. Let's put a bottom border on this group and press OK. And there we have the lines that we need. Now let's fix a few other things here. Let's put all of the column headings. Let's center them. Let's use, instead of saying mean, let's use the standard APA format. So if I delete that, the APA format for abbreviation for mean is capital M in italics. So I do Control I, Shift M, Control I. For standard deviation, it's going to be SD in italics. So I'll delete that. Control I, Shift S, Shift D, Control I, and then the range we can leave in range. Okay, now let's look at these measures. They're in italics. Let's take them out of italics because we don't want them in italics. So I turn italics off. Let's make them left justified. Let's make this column a lot bigger. Let's see, what names do we have here? Usual hours worked. That's good. That tells how many the average hours that the people reported that they worked. Or education, years. Now, we can only use a proper approved APA abbreviation, so let's just use the full word for years. Yearly earnings, that's a bit awkward. So let's change that to annual salary. Annual salary, and that's going to be in dollars per year. We're putting the units there in parentheses, and then the age, that will also be in years. Now you only put the units if there are some actual units like years, dollars per year. If we were looking at psychological measures like their score on their average score, or their score on the average OCB score, or the average stress score, those are just composite scales that don't have any unit to it. So we wouldn't have to put, and we would just report the number. Okay, so we have we've got the column titles, we've got the names of the variables. Now let's go up, let's do one blank line. Here we're going to put the column, the table, and the title of the table goes in italics. I clicked on italics there, and this is called Descriptive Statistics of Key Variables. And let's change this to Times New Roman. Whoops, didn't change it. Let me select it and change it to Times New Roman. Okay, Times New Roman. Okay, and then we need up here in Times New Roman also, we need to have table 1, but it's not in italics, descriptive statistics of key variables. And then down here, we're going to put a note, and the word note goes in italics. So Control I, capital N. Oops, we got to turn it into Times New Roman. Times New Roman. So note colon, and then I turn off the italics, and I'm going to put in n equals 100, and what I write in the note needs to be complete sentences, so I'll put a period at the end of it. Now, n is always in italics in IPA, so I'm going to turn the italics back on. Shift N, turn the italics off, space equals 100, period. Okay, and here we have our APA formatted table. So let's look and see what this will look like when we copy this into our Word document. So I'm going to copy all this, Control Copy. Now I'm going to bring over a blank Word document, and I'm going to paste Control V. And now we want to paste the formatting that we just did. So once we paste it, we're going to make sure we go to the Keep Source Formatting. And there we have our APA table in our table of descriptive statistics in APA format. Sometimes you'll need to adjust so like maybe column widths or something like that if they don't all fit. But in this case, it looks like everything worked out really well. And so we have an APA formatted table that we were able to create in Excel.